Hello, everyone. Good evening to all of you and welcome. My name is Lenka Nedvedova, and it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome you to our webinar from the series organized with the Project Unity in Diversity. This project is made possible thanks to the financial support of the European Union and through the collaboration with our project partners, for example, Erasmus Student Network Czech Republic, as well as the other organizations. I'm also very grateful to have you here today, and I hope this webinar brings you some useful insights regarding today's topic. I would like to also point out that this webinar is being recorded for later educational purpose, and after webinar, you will receive a feedback form through your email account. You log into today's webinar. So once you completed it, you will be able to receive your certificate of attendance. Please be aware that certificates of attendance will be only provided to those who are participating live today and who completed the feedback survey afterwards. Participants who only watch the recording will not receive any certificate. So today we will dive a little bit into anatomy of stress, and we will focus on specific topics which I think are very important for today's generation to be aware of. But I would like to start with a little bit of myth and stigmas, because I also do believe in our society there are still many misinformations regarding this topic. And also, I hope that today we are here to set some of them straight, and we are interesting about the whole anatomy of it and the origin and how to navigate ourselves through the life full of the stress situations. So in the beginning, I would like to focus a little bit more about the origin of it, because I think each of us experiences stress before an exam, before an important interview at work, in our relationships. Sometimes even at the mere thought that we might not manage something quite as well as we would like to. But what actually stress is? So we often talk about it as something negative, as an enemy we would be perfectly happy to get rid of. But today, though, I'd like to offer a slightly different perspective of it for at least a couple of my slides. So stress as a biological mechanism that originally helped us to survive. So from the biological perspective or biological point of view, stress is a physiological and psychological response of our body to perceive some threats or demand. And the most crucial part of this sentence is the key perceived. Because our brain doesn't distinguish between real physical danger and a social or emotional threat. For both the body and the brain, an exam, rejection, or criticism can activate exactly the same system as encountering a predator. So when the brain sees a situation as dangerous, the first part to react is the oldest part of our brain called amygdala, and it works like a danger detector. Once it spots a threat, it sends signals to other parts in the brain. We are not going to dive directly into them, but these parts triggers the body's automatic reaction. So the body shifts into what is commonly known as fight or flight mode, or more fully, fight, flight, or freeze. In the other words, basically, the body is navigated to confront the threat, run from it, or momentarily shut down. And this is the evolutionary model of behavior shared by all animals to help survive. But to get us into certain mode, certain reaction, we need our body to be under the control of our hormones. So the hidden key players are adrenaline and cortisol. These two friends are released during the stress situation. We are pretty much familiar how incredibly strong and confident we can become thanks to adrenaline. But be aware of the little guy here, the cortisol, because the cortisol prepares the body for the action. It releases energy from our internal storages. increase blood glucose levels as well. But cortisol, despite preparing us to an action, it also causes temporary suppression of certain other functions, such as immune response, such as digestion, and more. So put it simply, everything we don't need for fighting or running away is shut down due to cortisol. So this means that during periods of stress, the body may be less capable of taking care of itself and more ready to face a danger. So it pretty much sounds really familiar to us, what we are experiencing every day. So in the short term, stress can actually enhance our performance, improve our reaction time, and mobilize energy. That's why we often perform even better right before a deadline than we do a week in advance. So what happens when these hormones are released is heart rate increases, breathing speeds up, muscle tense. Attention narrows, focusing sharply on the source of the threat. So without a stress response, we wouldn't be able to react to challenges, learn new things, or adapt to change. Short-term stress is actually a tool for survival and growth. So it's really important to say one thing clearly. Stress itself isn't the bad guy. But the problem arises when the body remains in this state for too long. Because our bodies are designed to function in a cycle. Activation, response, return to balance. And this is everything we need to know about how to use the stress for our own advantage, but also be aware about the blind spots. So when the stress situation occur, the first is alarm phase. It occurs immediately after the stressor is encountered. It can be anything, your thought, you can be scared of something in your surrounding. This phase serves as a protective one, enabling a rapid response to threat. If the stressor persists, the body moves into the resistance phase, and in this stage, it tries to adapt to strain and maintain a relative balance. Outwardly, the individual may appear to be coping well, but gradually signs of fatigue, irritability, sleep disturbances, or weakened immunity may emerge. Essentially, the body is functioning at the expense of its reverse. And this is really very crucial stage because it's really tricky for our bodies, as we are going to see later on. So the third phase, is called exhaustion. If stress continues for too long without adequate recovery, the exhaustion phase sets in. Adaptive mechanisms are depleted, increasing the risk of health problems. Prolonged exposure to this phase can lead, for example, to burnout syndrome. So the greatest danger of stress tipping into a chronic state occurs during the resistance phase. So put it simply, resistance is the stage when the body is running on borrowed energy. So we are basically taking a loan which needs to be paid off one day. And if no break is taken, chronic stress is just around the corner. So we need to be aware of that. Stress is not a uniform phenomenon. It differs in duration, it differs in source, and in the way our body responds to it. If we truly want to understand stress, it's important to distinguish between its different types and how it manifests. So most commonly, we speak about acute stress. This is a short-term form of stress that arises in response to an immediate stressor. For example, an exam, a conflict, or a sudden challenge. Once the situation passes, the body returns to equilibrium, the balance. This type stress is a natural one, in many cases beneficial for us, as I said previously. In contrast to it, there is chronic stress. Chronic stress happens when a stressful situation lasted a long time and the body stays switched on for days, weeks, or even months. Cortisol, the bad guy, level stays elevated, the nervous system remains on constant alert, and the body is not given sufficient space to recover. If stress continues, the body keeps producing cortisol without a break. And this is a very crucial part. Because, for example, if even though you're going to be scared by mouse in your basement, even this small reaction will produce enough cortisol, which can which has to be break down for next 30, 60 minutes. So now you can imagine how much of it you can have in your bloodstream when you are exposed to stress for a long time. Long-term exposure to chronic stress can gradually affect not only psychological well-being, but also disrupts the body's overall physiological aspects as well. As I mentioned, that also the cortisol can shut down other mechanisms in our body. And between these two poles lies episodic acute stress. This is not a very common one, but this happens to people who go through frequent bursts of short-term stress. Each stressful situation is brief, but having them one after another creates a constant cycle of tension. It's common in those with busy schedules, many commitments, overloading themselves, frequent conflicts, or a hectic daily schedules. Stress can be also categorized according to its source. We are talking about environmental stress, which comes from our surrounding, like constant noise, pollution, overcrowding, on feeling unsafe where we live. And these factors can continuously burden the nervous system and create a feeling of discomfort or threat, even though we are not very aware of it. A specific category is a physiological stress, which happens when the body's balance is disturbed. For example, during illness, injury, lack of sleep, or poor nutrition. Even without psychological pressure, the body can still go into stress mode to try to restore stability. The last one is a psychological stress. Then this one, on the other hand, arises from our thoughts, interpretations, and emotional reactions. It may be a link to work pressure or academic expectations or social comparisons. Even it's very common amongst ADHD types or overthinkers or those with perfectionism or fear of rejection. Finally, there's a traumatic stress which occurs after extreme or shocking events like accidents, violence, or natural disasters. These experiences can overwhelm us and sometimes cause long-term effects, such as unwanted memories or avoiding certain situations. Stress itself can show up in many ways. There's a there's a long list of clinical symptoms and also a psychological one. From physical signs up to behavior changes. Physical signs can include chest pain, headache, feeling sick, stomach problems, tiredness, or trouble sleeping. These are your body's signals that it's under pressure and need attention, but usually we are trying to ignore them. Emotional sides include feeling restless, having trouble concentrating, feeling anxious or low, getting irritated easily, or losing motivation. Stress can affect your mood and make everyday tasks feel harder than usually. Behavior signs are changes in the way you act. You might eat more or less than usual. You can drink alcohol more or less than usual or use other substances. You can avoid social situations or develop habits like nail biting. Spotting these signs early on helps you deal with stress before it becomes too much. Knowing how stress show up can help you find ways how to manage it and keep a healthy balance in your life. Another popular terminology here, burnout syndrome. If stress continues for months or even years, it can lead to long-term changes in the brain. This often results in a loss of resilience, meaning that even minor challenges can feel overwhelming. People may experience a disturbance of identity, feeling a thought they are no longer recognized, or they cannot recognize themselves, or have changed fundamentally, switch in personality. Burnout is the result of chronic, unrevealed stress. It is a stage of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion, where the individual feels depleted, detached, and unable to cope effectively. The key difference between stress and burnout is that the stress is a reaction to demands or pressures and can sometimes motivate us or energize us. On the other hand, burnout is a long-term consequence of unmanaged stress, where energy, motivation, and resilience are severely depleted, and it prevents you from functioning effectively, being part of society, being part of your friends groups, and it requires recovery, rest, and often lifestyle adjustments. This, so we are closing the scary part of how the stress is manifesting. And now we are moving a little bit more into how to prevent it and how to understand ourselves. Managing stress is not just about feeling better in the moment. The goal of stress management is to reduce harmful effects of stress, restore the balance, and increase your resilience so that your body and mind can cope with challenges effectively. What we can always do to build resilience to stress is engage in a variety of activities, first of all. And that's not the only case that the only case how to navigate ourselves through the situation is not consciously avoiding them and hoping that that way we are going to protect ourselves completely. On the contrary, individuals who do not work on developing their resilience become the most vulnerable one. There are so many strategies in today's world which are accessible to give overall approach to stress management, how to navigate ourselves based on our personality, based on our daily routines. So this is not going to be an ultimate guidebook for any of our listeners, but I would like to point out some interesting ones. For example, the 4A model in stress management is a widely used framework that helps individuals prevent or reduce the impact of stress by focusing on four key strategies, each starting with the letter A: alter, accept, adapt, avoid. In short, the 4A model provides a practical guide to preventing, reducing, and managing stress, combining proactive changes with personal resilience building. Some of them are more focused on delegating tasks. Some of them are more focused how to help our mental stability. But each of them, in the end, are trying to reduce the risk of falling into the dark world of the stress. But a critical aspect of any prevention or any treatment is recognizing and being aware of the situation in which an individual finds themselves. Just as each of us is unique and can handle different levels of stress, this can be based by your genetics, basically from the things you inherited from your parents and your predecessors. There is no single ultimate guide for controlling stress, and there's no single belief everyone should follow up. So, in the moment when we recognize its influence, we ourselves become the key to unlocking the mystery. So we can explore some practical ways together to prevent and manage stress. Simple action we can incorporate into daily life to boost resilience and protect our mental and physical health. First, exercise regularly. Even light activities like brisk walking, jogging, or yoga help release tension and lift your mood. Spending time in nature also is powerful. Walk in a park or gardening allows your mind to rest and feel refreshed. Managing your time effectively is a key. At this point, you should be aware of your personality. If you are overthinker, if you work better with several planners, if you are more, I would say, free spirit person, you should think about this aspect first before you're going to do some adjustments to your routine. But important is to prioritize tasks, breaking down big projects into smaller steps, and create a realistic schedule to prevent feeling overwhelmed. Pairing this with a deep, I would say, breathing exercise, slow, mindful breath, calm the nervous system, and shift your mind from stress to calm. Music can also transform your mood. And also, equally important is connecting with others. Because we as a humans, we are animals who like to socialize. We are no different from other creatures in this whole world. And it's very important for us to remain our ties with others. So one of the first signs to being overwhelmed, to experiencing stressful situation or even burnout syndrome is separating ourselves from the society, spending more and more time just with ourselves and being afraid to return to society. With and in one hand, with this comes the fact that you shouldn't underestimate the power of laugh. Whether it's a comedy, jokes, or everyday fun, it releases endorphins, another hormones really important for our brain, and which naturally relieves stress. Also, we should not skip a power of sleep, and most importantly, the good one, not the forced one, because that's the crucial factor. Generally aiming for 7 up to 9 hours of quality sleep to recharge, improve mental clarity, and strengthen resilience. If you are overwhelmed, there is also an advice to writing down things, whether it's your journal or basically you're going to practice your gratitude. In the end, it helps bring clarity and shifts focus to positive aspects of your life. Finally, taking regular breaks, even short ones, gives your mind a chance to recharge and prevents burnout. By integrating these strategies into your daily routine, daily life, you can create a personal toolkit for your resilience, making it easier to handle challenges before stress becomes overwhelming. When it comes to celebrating your everyday accomplishments, it's very important to keep in mind that every task you're going to finish during the day, even it's a grocery shopping or your academic paper, you should be happy. You should be happy about it, and you should celebrate it some way, even if it's a bar of chocolate. Because even this small kind of gesture will help you tremendously in the end. So these are the steps you can take by yourself to educate yourself, to understand yourself even better, to learn from your trigger points, what is not good for your health, what basically increase the potential of having the risk of stress period. But if all of this is not enough, there's also ways how to seek a professional help. In today's society, and thanks to this project, Unity in Diversity, we are trying to fight with some stigmas and myths. And this is one of them. Seeking professional help is not something we should be scared of. It's not something we should be ashamed of. Because even the psychologists or psychotherapists, they are still the doctors. And when our mind is sick, it needs to be treated. So there are many and many specialized centers. There are so many anonymous websites and forums where you can ask for help, when you can ask for advice. I gathered just some of them, mainly for Czech listeners, because these are available in the Czech Republic. Some of them are private one, and some of them are for the public, and you can reach out to them 24/7, 7 days a week. So let's do a little reflection of what I've said so far during our webinar today. I briefly introduce you to all forms of stress and their stages and phases. Also, how you can recognize the symptoms of them, even the minor one, like the headache or nausea. Also, I talked a little bit how to navigate the acute form or the chronic ones. Also, how to navigate ourselves during the stressful situation, how to manage it, and where to find for the information, how to understand ourselves better, and to build our internal resilience. And this comes to the stress management in the end. So I would like to thank you for your participation today. I hope you gathered some new insights and perhaps you are getting more interesting about this topic. And together, I do believe we can create more, I would say, respectful, inclusive, and also a safe space to share our inner thoughts and also to be able to share our problems we are facing with, I would say, at least our close friends and with our close circles. So thank you again to all of you. I would stay here for the next couple of minutes. If you have some questions, feel free to ask. If not, you are free to leave. We will send you the form afterwards. And after you are going to finish up the form, we are going to provide you with the certificate of attendance. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.